This reading is it's from a volume called Notes of a Native Son, but the essay itself is called Notes of a Native Son. Um, I'm going to say something, and that is, you're welcome. You're welcome. What I mean by that is, if you had never read James Baldwin before, or if you had sort of heard of him vaguely and never read this particular essay before, if it was me, I'd be thankful that somebody had introduced it to me and told me to read it, because you're looking at a masterpiece, right? We don't get them very often, you know. I mean, I think maybe there are some chapters of A Room of One's Own, or maybe the book as a whole, which is kind of a masterpiece. And I think that this is also a masterpiece. So you're welcome. My pleasure. If you know about Baldwin before and you've read this before, there's no reason to thank me. But you're welcome if that's not the case. And I mean it, man. I'm nothing, you know. I'm the teacher, and in a course like this, okay, I share my thoughts about the readings, try to give you a little guidance, but it's the readings themselves which are the point, the great authors that we look at. And having finished this very powerful essay by Baldwin, I just felt that sort of gratitude that you feel when you read something great. So, yeah, it's good we're reading stuff like this. I am a white man, I guess, straight white man, sort of not a member of any particularly oppressed class. So, there is kind of shaky territory for me to be commenting on something like A Room of One's Own or something like Notes of a Native Son, because I don't share the experience. And, I still think that we all have something to say and we can all read things. And when it is on a philosophical level, I feel perfectly comfortable in reading it and commenting on it and criticizing it. But when things get personal, like what does it really feel like to be a woman who's excluded from a library because she's a woman, like happens in the first chapter of A Room of One's Own? I don't know what that feels like. What does it feel like to be black in America? And what does it feel like to be black in America in 1943 as a young man? I have no idea. And this is a very personal essay, so I am unable, all I can do is read it. I can't, in any kind of authoritative way, comment on that. This is an extremely personal essay and an extremely complex one, just to point out some obvious things about it, some just factual things about it. There's a lot going on at the same time. The death of his father, the birth of his youngest sibling, his youngest sister, and a riot in Harlem, a race riot in Harlem. They're all going on at the same time. And what's also going on is James Baldwin's young life. He's 19 years old. He's left home. He's trying to make his way, and it is kind of an overwhelming number of things that he's trying to deal with. They all come together, and this essay is a really brilliant description of those events, the confluence of events, let's say, in his life when he was 19 years old. Obviously, the biggest subject of this essay is his father, with whom it's safe to say he had an ambivalent relationship. He continually struggled with his father. He didn't really know his father. He was afraid of his father. There are times, I think, when he hated his father, and he's trying to come to terms with all that now that his father has died. And he is, I think, trying to be non-sentimental about it. You know, on the one hand, realizing that there was perhaps more to his father than he ever gave his father credit for, and on the other hand, not forgetting the misery that his father caused him as a child and as a young man. Very powerful. And the second section, in which he describes his time in New Jersey when he was working during the war, and I don't even know what to say. He snapped in Trenton, New Jersey, having been repeatedly denied service at restaurants because he was black, having repeatedly heard that phrase, "We don't serve Negroes here." He just snapped, and you know was lucky to get away unharmed. But being unharmed, no, he wasn't unharmed. He was damaged by the experience. Quite interesting, growing up in Harlem, you're subjected, of course, to all sorts of prejudices in New York City. But he had to go to New Jersey to get the real treatment. Um, so he's absolutely shocked. It's an interesting time, World War II, for race relations in America. You have race riots. You have black people and white people sort of at each other's throats in a way. Although the riot in Harlem stayed within Harlem. He notes that. I don't think he quite explains it, but it's an important fact. And it's a tragedy for him. You know, it's a tragedy. Uh, that is, he doesn't think that it was anything. It was understandable what happened, maybe inevitable, but he doesn't think that it was a good thing. Uh, I don't know what to say. What he has to say about it. Yeah, this is on page 82. He's described what happened. Watching all the stores in Harlem having been looted with just, you know, commodities just spilling over into the street. He says, but one's first, this is right here, but one's first incongruous impression of plenty. He hadn't realized there were that many stores in Harlem until they'd been looted. Was countered immediately by an impression of waste. None of this was doing anybody any good. It would have been better to have left the plate glass as it had been and the goods lying in the streets. I think a lot of people who disagree with Baldwin here. I don't know. But it's James Baldwin, so that thought is always a serious thought and a complex thought. Right? He follows it up right here by saying it would have been better, if this hadn't happened, but it would also have been intolerable. For Harlem had needed something to smash. To smash something is the ghetto's chronic need. That is, if you're living in a situation that's constantly hostile and oppressive, it's going to build up. So he's not blaming anybody for the looting and the destruction. It's too bad that it happened. It would have been better if it hadn't happened, he said, but it's totally understandable. Not kind of anger he feels, because he feels it in himself. He feels anger towards his father. He feels anger towards what white America did to his father in his mind. And it's all really very ambivalent, meaning ambivalence, feeling conflicting or contradicting emotions about the same thing. I think that what we see is that ambivalence growing from essay to essay as we read James Baldwin. That ambivalence towards his father. Maybe he loved his father, but he also hated him. And that ambivalence towards being American, as will, I think, be further explored. There's a part of James Baldwin that hates America, and it's got good reason. But there's also part of him that recognizes that he's American and that he's got to somehow make his truce with reality, because that's America's who he is. He's black in America, but he's American. So there's a part of him that can't hate it. And in fact, he says hate is not really going to be a viable option. As he says, bottom of page 82, this relation, that is the real relation of the black person in America to white people, prohibits simply anything as uncomplicated and satisfactory as pure hatred. In order really to hate white people, One has to blot so much out of the mind and the heart that just hatred itself becomes an exhausting and self-destructive pose. It is pure hatred. It's really not, at least in Baldwin's mind, viable. Then what is viable? I don't know. This is a brilliant essay. And yeah, you're welcome. I'm nobody, but if somebody handed this to me, said you should read this, and I read it, I'd be thankful. I am thankful for having read it. Who introduced it to me? I think it was my daughter. I'm thankful to her.